take one of those? Yeah, flip the other way. I think the front one will do better. There we go. Alright, so hit record, get in levels, hold this thing over with this. Good morning! First session of the day, how's everybody doing? Good. Ready to get going?
I'll be great once you tell me how to stop working.
You're in the right place, my friend. I don't have all the answers, but I've got a few tips to get you rolling at least.
Are your slides going to be available? Like
yes. It's a good question. Actually, I don't think I put these up on GitHub, but what I can do is give you a card. And we can get them out there. Otherwise, if you just watch the Twitter feed, you can send something out like in an hour or two for Openwest, and I'll hashtag it with Freelance. Just plan it that way too. So as you mentioned, this is called Cutting the Cord, How to Make the Jump to Freelance. My name is Tyacke. Why are you guys here today, right? You guys probably work 9 to 5, so you're sick of it. Long hours, punching a clock, working for somebody else to make a lot of money off the sweat of your back. If you're a contractor currently, that might mean $350 an hour is your billable, and you maybe see 25 or 35 of that. It's great for the companies. It can be great for you. There is a lot to be said for stability. And some people just need structure. If you're not one of those people and you have what it takes to make the jump as a freelancer, it's a great lifestyle with some challenges, and we'll look at all those things today. So just real quick, this is going to be a real informal talk. I put some slides together as sort of some reminder points and some topic level stuff, but as you guys have questions, feel free to shout them out or just raise your hand. I really want to keep this as informal as possible. There's a lot to cover when it comes to freelancing, and I want to make sure I'm answering the questions that you have and not just taking my best stab at it. So that being said, I have done this for a long time. I kind of know the pain points that I went through, but I'm sure you guys have some burning questions that you'd like to see answered. So if I'm covering something, you have a question about it, or you've got something that I'm not covering, please raise the old hand there. And hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end too.
Is there a way to kill the music in the background?
Say again?
Is there a way to kill the music in the background?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just going to do that.
I just couldn't hear you very well.
Yep, for sure. I didn't even realize it was still going. So, who am I, and more importantly, why should you listen to anything that I say? Again, my name is Tyacke. I have been a Flash web developer, freelance for 10 years. Last year, actually about 6 months ago, I took my first full-time gig again is it a decade? Is 10 years? Is that right? Yeah, in a decade. So now I'm a developer evangelist with a company called Bespoke, doing things in the WebRTC space. So I work in web communication, which is fun. I'm also a huge beer geek. I know that might not be a big popular topic in this crowd, but if you are beer fans and you want to chat with me about it, I'm happy to talk your ear off all night on that topic as well. But getting back to the freelance portion, as I mentioned, I did that for 10 years. I got my start working for a couple of startups in San Diego, doing Flash development. It was mostly in the media space. I worked very, very long hours. It was right out of college, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. My track record was a 38-hour shift. I got to work the next day, or still at work the next day, wearing the same clothes, with big bags under my eyes, and my boss came in and didn't even know I'd been there since the night before, didn't even put 2 and 2 together. And so when I was leaving to go home at about 4:30 in the afternoon, he asked why I was leaving so early. It was kind of at that moment that I realized that it wasn't necessarily worth it. Me putting in these hours to meet unrealistic deadlines that the sales team put together for the dev team, which again, that's a whole other topic, wasn't really giving me anything in return. Right? I had a little bit of stock in the company. If for some reason that company actually did manage to take off, it was that 1 in a million thing, I might have had a nice exit, but it wasn't really the good goal there. It wasn't a good chance of that happening. So I took off and got to freelancing. I actually made it about 3 days after leaving my last freelance or full-time gig before I actually ended up starting up my own startup company. So I left startup to get back to freelancing, or to get into freelancing and hopefully have some more control over my schedule, get some sleep, all these nice things. I made it 3 days, did my own startup, ran that for another 2 years, which was a whole other learning experience, running a business and trying to get money for a startup. And then after that, I got back into the hardcore freelancing lifestyle, which is where all this stuff is coming from. This whole talk is based on that experience over the 10, 11 years that I worked in that space. So who are you guys? Any freelancers now? People that are currently doing freelance stuff? Right on. What are you guys hoping to get out of this talk?
Just a different perspective.
Some pointers, maybe some tips, some tricks, something different?
People approach me about work all the time because I know I do it.
Yeah.
I just never know how to handle that on top of my normal job.
Yeah.
rapid structure, just because it's so all over the place.
Yeah, and kind of doing the freelance and full-time thing can be very lucrative if you don't like sleep. If you're a fan of sleep, it's not going to work out too well for you because you work 9 to 5, and then you go home and you have dinner and you see the wife and kids or the girlfriend and dog or your empty apartment, if that's the case. And then you play Xbox for a little while and realize, oh, I've got 8 hours of project work that's due tomorrow. Maybe I should get on that. And it's 4 a.m. and you've got to get up and go to work the next day. It's doable. It's totally doable. There are things called weekends. Those don't have to be for relaxing. If you love coding that much, it's a great way to make some extra cash. And I don't say it's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. You just got to be able to manage the work-life balance, which is a big thing. The rest of you guys, full-time employees, most of the audience here, you guys all want to go freelance, get a taste of that good life? That's kind of the consensus? All right. So why freelance? There's a lot of reasons to freelance. Freedom, right? Freedom over your time, freedom over your vacation time, freedom over your life, not having to punch that clock. Just versatility in your schedule is a big part of it too. So being able to kind of jump around as needed. If you want to take a week off to take a vacation, or just take a Friday off to go fishing or go to a birthday or whatever it is, you don't have to worry about, I only have 2 vacation days left, how is it going to work? But what you do have to worry about is, if I don't work those 2 days, am I going to be able to make rent this month? So there's a balance to that. But there's a lot of benefits to it. So first we're going to kind of take a look at the good, then we'll look at some of the bad, and then we'll get into a bit of the ugly. So again, freedom. Freedom is a big thing. You're not reporting to someone, you report to yourself. Money. There is potential to make a hell of a lot more money as a freelancer than as a full-time employee. That's not always the case, but when you can go out and bill yourself out at, say, $100 an hour, and you need to make $100,000 a year, do the math, right? The hours needed to make that $100,000 is a lot less than what it might be if you're making $20 or $25 an hour working as a full-time employee. Again, if you're pulling a $100,000 salary, great, right? But you're working 9 to 5, you're working all year round. You might be able to do that same dollar amount in working 3 days a week, and taking a week off every month even. That being said, if you work more hours, if you do work that full-time with that higher hourly rate, you can potentially bump into 150, 170 a year as a freelance developer. Again, it depends on your market. I don't know about Provo specifically. I'm speaking California numbers, which is a much different animal. But you can also freelance remotely. So if you have remote clients that work in places like San Francisco that are used to paying higher rates, you can certainly negotiate up. And I would consider, I would recommend keeping that in mind when you do go to negotiate your rates, is where the people that are actually paying your check live too, and what the rates that people command in that area are. Tax benefits. This is a huge one. Being able to write things off will actually make you money, or save you money, as the case may be. So if you have $150,000 a year, you're stoked, and you've got to go write that tax check to Uncle Sam at the end of the year for $60,000, $70,000, that's very painful. But being able to write off things like your rent and your utility, and we'll get into more details on this later, will drop your taxable income. So that can really help you save money in the long run. So if you have $50,000 in expenses for your business that year, you can write those off, at which point you now only have $100,000 in taxable income, which is a completely different tax bracket than $150,000. So you're taxed differently and you're taxed on less dollars. So in the end, you end up paying in less. And if you have a really good accountant, this can be an even bigger benefit. Cool projects, right? We all get burnt out working on the same thing day in and day out, especially if you work in kind of a one-trick shop where you're just working on a project or a piece of software, as opposed to maybe more of a contract-style shop where new projects are coming in all the time. Burnout and staying excited, about what you're doing is tough, right? So being able to pick the projects that inspire you, that attract you, have your choice in what you work on is a really good feature or benefit. You get to make your own hours. Right, this is kind of a double-edged sword. You'll probably see this piece of the slide come up again. But being able to make your own hours is a huge benefit, as long as you can stay on top of yourself. And that's the key to it. You have to be able to manage your time and make sure you get things done. And again, freedom. And I'll say it one more time, freedom. So I've got a couple of these slides. This guy, NC Winters, actually let me use these for the talk, but they kind of perfectly captured what it is to be a freelancer. So I'll read these for these folks that can't read in the back. It says, lunch in an office job, microwave a cup of soup. Lunch as a freelancer, microwave a cup of soup in your bunny slippers. Right? So that's kind of the gist of it, right? If I get up in the morning and I'm sitting around in my PJs, we'll say that, or sweatpants or whatever, and walking around the house, I go out and get a bowl of cereal and I sit down and start working. which is great, right? There's a huge benefit to that. There's no commuter traffic, there's no, I waste 2 hours a day getting to and from work. There's not that ramp up period in the morning, you just kind of sit down and get your stuff done, and if you're efficient, that 8 hours can crank out between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. and then you're done for the day and you're already home. So you go do whatever you want. As opposed to the office where you're going in, and there's that 45 minutes of gossip at the water cooler, and then you're finally sitting down to your desk. And of course, if you actually do get 8 hours in by 3, you can't leave at 3 because everybody's giving you that evil eye, like, who are you? They don't know what you did that day. You don't have to deal with that at home, so there's a big piece of that. The bad, and there's definitely a lot of it. It's hard work. You have to run a business and run your work. So you're not only having to go out and constantly hunt down clients and find new work on a weekly, if not daily basis, you're also having to actually do the work that you're getting. So there's kind of a double-edged piece to it there, is that it's great to have your own schedule and everything, but it's a lot more work to run a business and be the person in that business. So if you think about your 9 to 5 now, there's probably 4, 5, 6 people at the top of the company that run the day-to-day. They do biz dev, they do finding new clients. You might even have whole teams for that stuff. Now you're that guy. So if you work in a startup now and you think you wear a lot of hats, you have no idea. When you get into a freelance gig, it's even more. There's no job security. Project ends, you're done. They owe you nothing. It's not like a 9 to 5 where there's maybe a process involved in laying somebody off, or you have to worry about that thing. You're working project to project for the most part. That being said, you can freelance on long-term gigs. Some people love that. It's not my style, but you can work with contracting companies who will actually outsource you as an employee of them to other people, so you can get on the long-term contracts. That's more like the 9 to 5 scenario, with some of the benefits of being a freelancer. Then there's also just longer-term gigs. People might want you to come in-house for, say, 6 months, and you'll sign a contract to that end, saying, hey, I'm going to work for you guys for 6 months. The day this contract ends, though, I'm out the door, and then you're looking for work again. So there isn't the security of the 9 to 5, and if you've got kids or you've got mortgage payments, that's something to consider, and I highly recommend you weigh that heavily before just jumping into this. No free bennies. You don't get insurance. Nobody's going to buy that for you, and insurance is very expensive. It used to be, 80 bucks a month I think I paid when I first started out, and over the course of 5 years it went up to $350 a month. So every quarter I'd get a nice little letter in the mail from my insurance company saying, due to the increasing cost of healthcare, we have raised your insurance rates 25%. And they would do that quarterly. So up and up and up and up. Nobody's paying for your benefits. So really learn to appreciate what you do have while you're in the 9 to 5 gig. If somebody's paying for even part of your insurance, that's great. If you have things like 401k contributions, even better, right? You're not going to get any of that stuff.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah, please.
As your expenses like that went up, did you just adjust your contracting fees?
I should have. I never did. That's something you can do. You can tell your client, due to the increasing cost of healthcare. So you definitely can, and that's things to factor in when you come up with your rate. You have to think about all of your expenses and what you need to make in order to survive. And then you also have to look at what the industry will hold, right? What's the standard? What will people be willing to pay? When I was doing flash work, I would bill out at $100 an hour. That was pretty much my standard. At the high end, I billed out at $150. That was more for rush jobs or things that were really intense, short deadlines, had a lot of parts to them. At the low end, I'd bill out at $50. If work was slow and I needed to just get some cash coming in the door, $50 an hour is a heck of a lot better than $0 an hour. So you really just got to look at it. But there was still a lot of companies at that time, even when the industry would support, say, $100 an hour, a lot of people still wanted to pay $35, right? And there's people out there that work for $35, no problem. But their skill level is a lot different. So that's another thing you have to think about too, is where your level of skills at. If you're first getting into this and you don't have 6, 7 years of experience under your belt, you're not like a hardcore developer, maybe you just need to get some more portfolio pieces, don't scoff away from charging less, just to get some stuff under your belt so people can recognize you a little bit better. Business expenses. Running a business is expensive. If you run a corporation in California, there's a $800 a year tax fee just to run that corporation. Again, I'm not sure in Utah it's probably different, but your day-to-day stuff you take for granted, pens, papers, ink, buying your laptop, these are all things that cost money. They are also things you can write off, so there's kind of a double edge to that as well. Running a business, good and bad. It's cool to run your own business if you like that, but you really have to know what you're doing and stay on top of yourself. There's plenty of books out there on it, there's tons of information on the internet. There's things to be learned about it, but it's still something you have to do. So it's not like you just wake up and focus on code. It's like you wake up and focus on code, and then focus on invoicing clients, and then focus on finding new clients, and on and on and on. So there's the whole side of running a business too. Again, the bad part is you make your own hours. Eventually we might see this again. So it's great when you want to take a day off, but it's bad when you want to take a day off. If you're not motivated and you're not someone that can stay on top of yourself and you need that regimented structure of 9 to 5, think about that before jumping into freelance. Again, freelance on the side, totally different story. Freelance is your living. It can be a problem. If you're not motivating yourself to get out of bed in the morning, you know, like, I can sleep until 9, I'll just work late tonight. Well, then it's 5, and then all the guys are going out for drinks. Maybe I should go with them, or going out for, I don't know what you guys go out for here. I don't know.
Hot chocolate.
There you go. Going out for a round of hot chocolates. You know, you might cut out for the day and you only put in 5 hours. It's an issue that you need to be aware of and put plans in place to stay on top of yourself beforehand. And long hours. You know, you work hours now, you cut out at 5. You might only put in that 8-hour day, 9 to 5, or whatever it is. When you're a freelancer, the hours don't stop at 5. I mean, they can, right, if you can get your work done. But if you're under a deadline and you said you're going to have something done in 3 days, well, you're going to be working straight through those 3 days to get that work done. Because your name and, you know, what you accomplish and meeting those deadlines is what's going to drive your business. If you're known as being someone who constantly doesn't meet deadlines and produces shoddy work, you're not going to get any work, right? You're not going to survive. So it's something to keep in mind. The long hours, this is so perfect, as my girlfriend will attest. Almost finished with this project. I can't wait for our trip this Saturday. When is the weekend anyways? 3 days ago. And that's pretty much spot on. You work all the time. So if you're a freelancer, again, it's part about how you manage yourself. But waking up on a Saturday morning, checking emails, and honey, I just got to crank out a little bit of work before we go to the park or do whatever, it's pretty commonplace. You know, you're responsible for that, so it puts a little bit more weight on your shoulders to get the stuff done. It's not like the office closes at Friday, you know, when you leave work for the day, because if the office is your house, you're kind of always there. So the ugly. Air quotes on difficult. Pick your favorite term to replace difficult with, but difficult clients can be a nightmare. I've had clients that like to scream at me, clients that like to blame me for all their problems, such as, we brought you on to help us out of this bind, and you know we've got a 3-day deadline, and we've had 6 months to get this done, and you're the only guy that can fix it. One day in, when you're working diligently to help them, they call you up screaming and saying how it's all your fault, this thing's broken and not working yet. Wait a minute, I just joined yesterday. How is the last 6 months my fault? It happens pretty regularly. Double Social Security tax. So right now, your employer is paying half of your Social Security tax. When that employer goes away and you work for yourself, you pay 100% of that. So it's just another tax charge to be aware of. Social Security tax isn't insane, but it's not cheap. It's another expense. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Deadbeat clients. Now this is my worst ugly bullet point. I've only had this happen once or twice, thankfully. The worst was to the tune of $7,500. I had a client tell me for 2 months, I think. He paid me every 2 weeks, like clockwork. And this was a friend of a friend, a guy that had been vouched for. He'd known him for 10 years. They're close. They lived together at one point. I did some work for him for several months. He was paying on time, consistently. And then that last invoice came along. I said, I'm going to have to move on after this. I gave him a month's heads up. I trained the new guy in. I did everything you're supposed to do. Right? Sent him that last invoice, and it just was taking a while. And he sent me an email saying, it's on the way. Don't worry about it. Okay, cool. Just wait it out. And I've got bills piling up. I need this money. I'm planning on this money to pay my bills. And long story short, 3 months into it, it was Thanksgiving Day. He calls me up on the phone and he says, yeah, I've been getting your emails asking about this check. I just want to do you the courtesy of calling you to tell you it's not coming. He then shared a few expletives with me and hung up. His answer to why was because he felt he paid me enough. So we had a contract, didn't matter. I didn't want to spend the money and time pursuing legal action for it. I figured it was best just to let it go and move on. But these are things you can potentially run into. There's things you can do to protect yourself from this, but you have to keep that in mind. And the reason I bring this point up mostly is to just tell you, to caution yourself when it comes to saving money. Make sure you have a nest egg. You always want at least 3 months runway in the bank. So when things like this do happen, you have money saved up and you can weather the storm.
How do you weed people out from that? Like, not even getting involved in it?
Yeah, so you can't, you get your gut, right? You talk to people, you listen to what their expectations are. Maybe if you're lucky, you know people that have worked with them in the past. If they're larger shops, they'll generally have a more airtight client or contract in place. If it's little mom and pop startups or other things like that, you've got more risk there for sure. But you just kind of have to go with your gut on what you feel about that person. And sometimes your gut's wrong. I mean, look at the example here. My friend vouched for this guy. I'd known him 10 years. I'd worked with him for several months, and he was paying consistently. And then just out of the blue, no more money. So contracts are the best thing you can do, and also consulting an attorney, which we'll touch on briefly in a bit. It's worth having somebody on your team to know when these things happen, how to handle it.
Different payment methods, get paid upfront or escrow, stuff like that.
So that's something you can do too, for sure. Yeah, a lot of people like to do the quarter up front or half up front kind of model. I've never operated on that because I've had a lot of difficulty doing that. But that being said, if that's your gig and that's what you do, stick to your guns. And if you guys work with me, this is what it's going to take. I'm going to need 1/3 up front, 1/3 partway through the project, and 1/3 at the end. The other thing you can do is break down milestones. So you can actually take your scope of work, which you should create for every project, and say, when I deliver this piece, you're going to pay me this much money. When I deliver this piece, you're going to pay me this much money. So you're incrementally getting paid throughout the process, as opposed to, I'm going to go build this whole thing for you, and you're going to pay me $15,000 at the end. Then you deliver the software, and they say, well, I don't really want to pay you that $15,000, so sue me, right? That happens all the time in this industry, so things to be aware of there.
Couldn't you hold the software hostage and be like, look, but don't touch?
You certainly could. There's a thing called net when it comes to payments. Most clients like to pay on 30 days net. It's pretty standard business practice. It might be written into your contract. That can be up to you. That's a point you can negotiate. You might put in a bullet point that says payment due on receipt of software, right? But then how do they test it before paying you, right? That's kind of the back and forth. So you have to set up some sort of a hosting. Well, hey, you guys can go and play with it here, test it out, make sure it works, and then I'll deliver it. I'll give you the source code once you pay me. That's definitely something you can do too, but it really depends on the situation and what you're building here. Dry spells, problematic. No work, no money, right? I had a really rough year a couple of years back where there was 6 months with no work. That's where that nest egg comes in place, and just learning how to live lean. You have to know how to weather the storms, because that's what this game is all about. It's all ups and downs. There's no, nice paycheck every 2 weeks. It's paid when the client feels like paying you some of the times, or when you can get them to pay. A lot of times you'll hear people say, I get this all the time. Well, we really want to pay you, but we haven't gotten paid yet from our client. There's this trickle-down thing that happens all the time in web development. Some shop up top will hire another shop for, say, $300,000. Project we did for Pepsi. This is exactly the case. They hired a kind of big design firm to do the work for $300 grand. Design firm hired somebody else, who then hired me to do the actual work. Right? So along that way, everybody's shaving off little bits. By the time it got to us, that $300,000 was something like $7,000. And when it came time to payment, 60 days in after the payment was due, he was telling me, well, I haven't been able to get the client above me, who hasn't been able to get the client above them, this guy didn't get the money from Pepsi, yada, 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 right? It goes down the chain. So people want to play this whole downhill flow game. You just got to stick to your guns again, and again, have an airtight contract. Explain very calmly to them that you are my client, Pepsi is not my client, I'm doing work for you, we have an agreement, you and I, we have a contract between you and I, and you need to pay me. And again, this is where having some sort of an attorney at your disposal is really a good idea. It's not really a recommendation that I followed myself and wish I would have. It would have saved me a lot of headaches. So just take that piece of advice. It's expensive to work with an attorney, but spending $1,000 up front to make sure you have a really good contract in place and somebody that you can call on to review larger scale contracts is really valuable in the end. Too much alone time. We are social creatures. I know in the development world there's a lot of people that like their heads down alone time. We're not very social as a whole, a lot of us, but too much alone time can be a bad thing. And you'll learn very quickly that sitting quietly in your apartment day in and day out for weeks on end, not talking to other people, can get very lonely, and if not even a little bit depressing. There's ways to battle this. Rent an office space in a shared space where you can interact with other people. Go work at a coffee shop. Find something that allows you to interact with other folks. It could be even just like hobbies, right? Intramural stuff that you like to do in the evenings. But being able to interact with other geeks is really important too, because you can bounce ideas off them, right? We do that all the time at the office, and you take it for granted. You go and talk to the guy in the cube next to you and say, hey, what do you think about this? And you guys spitball a little bit, and you come up with this great idea. When it's always just you, it's just you having to solve 100% of the problems without bouncing anything. So having a network of people in place that you can talk to, and also just having a way to interact with people is a really big thing to start with. Procrastination, nothing needs to be said about that. And lack of office hours, again, can lead to you working way too much. And I'm going to kind of start cruising through this, guys, because we're already running really low on time. Clients, this is the client game, right? You never know what you're going to get. Spin the wheel, you might get a deadbeat, you might get fickle, you might get friendly, etc. But this is really what you're kind of gambling when it comes to clients. Repeat clients are great, by the way. So is freelancing right for you? We talked about a few of these, but are you self-motivated, driven, organized, outgoing, and social? All of these are things that you should be or should be willing to learn to be and able to be successful at freelancing. You're going to be able to drive yourself and motivate yourself to get the work done, stay organized in order to stay on top of things like running your business, taxes, paying the IRS, keeping track of invoices, and outgoing and social. That's how you find work. So going to events like this, speaking, just getting out and attending and talking to people, that's how you find connections and find work. So making the jump. First you got to crawl. Before anything else, preparation is the key to success. Alexander Graham Bell said it very well, and it applies very heavily to this situation. So create a budget. I'm going to kind of breeze through these, so if there's any further questions, I know we got like 15 minutes left. I don't even know what happened the last half an hour, but create a budget. So figure out how much you're burning every month. Do this before you leave your cushy job. Stay as long as you can. Keep making that money before you make the leap, and be ready to do it when you do. So creating a budget is step one. Start networking. Attending events like this, kudos to all of you. This is a great first step. You're not only learning, but you're meeting people. So reach out. Tell folks you're interested in freelancing. Talk to your family, your friends, anybody you've done work with in the past, former coworkers. Even if you're in a full-time job, it's not a bad thing to say, hey, I'm looking for some side work. Okay? Start building out that network and letting people know that you're looking for potential freelance gigs. If you don't tell them, they're not going to think to ask you. Right? And that guy you meet at the conference today might know a friend who's looking for a website built, and he might be able to refer him back to that cool kid you met at the conference. It happens all the time when it comes to this kind of stuff. I found a lot of work this way. So just start networking now. It never hurts. It's never a bad thing to know people and to make new friends. So you got nothing to lose. Even if you don't plan to freelance after this talk, still start networking. Update all the things: resumes, cover letters, business cards, portfolios, websites, LinkedIn, wrong slide. All these things need to be updated, right? You don't need to be rubbing it in your boss's face, but go spend some time on your resume. People are going to look at that. Read articles on what a good resume entails these days, what goes into it. I was amazed at how awful my resume was when I went back and finally re-updated it. And I did it again every 2 years or so, or even every year. I mean, depending on the work you're doing, keep it up to date. Polish it, read up on the finer points of resume writing. Keep them concise, keep them down to a page. That's the good thing. That's all they're going to look at anyways. And include things like certifications. Are you certified in Perl or something, right? Put that stuff on there. If you have your MCSE, if you've done anything you've done, just put it on there. That's useful and pertinent to your skill set. Also list things like frameworks. If you know that Angular is really hot and you're all up to speed on Angular 2 and you do a bunch of work in that, put that on there right front and center. You might also put software. So if you know you're going to be doing some design work, put Photoshop on there. Right? These things that employers look for, think of the keywords they're going to put in their job postings and then try to tailor your resume to that stuff. Cover letters should have this ready as well. Try to write something generic that you can then tailor. On days when I was looking for work online, I might send out 40 cover letters or 40 job applications. Just numbers game. Blast it out there and see what comes back. Every time, you should be looking at the qualifications that they're looking for in that job and try and tailor that cover letter to speak to your experience as it pertains to those qualifications. So have that stuff handy so that when you do start doing work, you can just keep sending it out. Business cards, again, for the networking piece, really handy to have. What was that kid's name? Oh yeah, here's his card. Go talk to this guy, give him some work, give him some money. Portfolio and website, I am awful at keeping this stuff up to date. I think today my portfolio is almost non-existent. It's some images. That being said, I highly recommend you have one. A lot of clients will ask for it. It's very useful to be able to send them to your URL and just have them see some of your past work. If you don't have it, again, work on the cheap. Do stuff for free. Friends and families run a soda shop downtown and do their website for them. Get some work out there that you can show so that people know you're not just talking. LinkedIn, again, is really huge. I've had a lot of people hit me up through LinkedIn. They have their whole career section on there now, and a lot of work kind of trickled in and found me through that way. So keep your LinkedIn up to date. Put what you're interested in there. Talk about your latest projects. Talk about your latest frameworks, languages, etc. that you're working with. Okay, so warning, before we get into this next section, I am going to read this paragraph and you are going to listen. I am not a doctor, lawyer, attorney, or accountant, and I don't even play one on TV. The information presented in this session is purely based on my own experiences, and I am not accountable for how you use the information presented within. If you go out there and get yourself in trouble with the IRS, you're on your own. Hugs and kisses, Kyle. All right, everybody on board with that? You guys, we're good? Find a good accountant. I cannot stress this enough. You'll probably see this slide again later. Find a good accountant. It took me a few years to do this. I had a guy that did my taxes. I thought he was awesome. I asked him lots of really interesting questions like, can I write off my student loan repayment? He said no. I said okay. And the next 5 years went on and I paid back $60,000 in student loans. I then got a new accountant. I said, can I pay back my student loan repayment to write that off? She said, yes, of course. We just need to make you an S-Corp instead of an LLC, and then it's a taxable benefit that you can make as basically tuition reimbursement, right? To which I thought, oh, I just paid 60 grand worth of taxable income in that I didn't have to. So, find a good accountant. Say it with me. Find a good accountant. All right. Pick an entity. Sole proprietorship, LLC, and S-Corp are the big three. There are others. Sole proprietorship is basically you working for yourself as yourself. That means that you give your social security number saying, this is me, this is who you're paying, and this is who's going to be paying the taxes. Basically, a sole proprietorship is just you letting everybody know that you're operating as a business. So I'd be Kyle Tyacke, proprietorship. All the money trickles straight through to me. There's no business entity between me and a client. It's kind of risky. You also take all the fault. So if they want to sue you for something, all that stuff that you own, your house, your car, your dog, they can take that away from you. It's not owned by the business. There's no business in between. So they're not suing a business, they're suing a person. So just think of sole proprietorship as sort of level one. It's just you. And if you're just doing a few dollars here and there, freelancing on the side, not a bad way to go. You register a doing business as or a DBA saying, I'm now Kyle Tyacke Inc. or whatever. And you pay that, and then the money just goes straight through to me. LLC is sort of step up from there. Gives you a little bit of a protection. It's called a limited liability corporation or company. It's company. Yeah. So an LLC basically says, hey, I have a business, and my business is Kyle Tyacke LLC, right, or Jim Bob's Coding Shop, whatever I want to call it. But the thing is that when somebody goes to sue me, they're suing the LLC. The LLC gives me a level of protection. So my dog, my house, my car, it's still mine. I can't go after those personal assets. So kind of a big thing there. Also, LLCs have some advantages when it comes to tax write-ups. There's more benefits in place. It also makes you look more like a business to the IRS. If you're a sole proprietorship, there's this thing called the hobby, something or other, what they call hobby tax or something like that. Basically, it's you running a business just for write-offs. And lots of people do that. And lots of people get audited because they do that. So to avoid red flags and audits from the IRS and run-ins that you don't want to deal with, if you're planning on doing this as a full-time business, if you're planning on making your living doing this, form something like an LLC or an S-Corp, because it's going to show the IRS that, hey, I am a business, I do mean this, and I am running my taxes through that business. S-Corp, sort of the same thing, just even a higher level. As a corporation, there's some other tricky bits you have to do, managing minutes, paying that $800 yearly fee. Again, not sure about Utah, but California. And there's some other things associated with an S-Corp, but there's also some additional benefits and some extra security. So again, the corporation can be sued without affecting you personally. So read up on those different types and talk to your accountant. They're the ones that are going to really be able to tell you, like, this is the best way for you to form your business. More info, SBA.gov. That's the Small Business Administration. There's info on all of those three things. I highly recommend you read up on that. But again, at the end of the day, talk to your accountant. They'll look at your assets, they'll look at what you're doing and what you're looking to make, and figure out what the best form of entity is for you, and how to save you the most money. Register your business. You're going to need to do this with state and Fed. Two different things. How? You can use LegalZoom.com. That's what I did. A couple $100, and they send you this big fat booklet, everything taken care of, all the paperwork's done. Super easy, highly recommended. BizFilings.com, similar thing, or you can do it yourself. All the information is available online. You can print off all the forms. You can go to your city clerk's office and turn everything in. But it's more difficult, and when it comes to this stuff, I didn't know enough about it, so LegalZoom was a pretty simple option for me. They just took care of everything. I just had to sign and pay. So, good options. Federal Tax ID, an EIN. This is basically with an employer identification number. You register for one of these at the IRS.gov. You're going to need to do this, for your business. This is basically a social security number for your business. So instead of you saying, hey, here's my social security number, you guys can just have this and bill everything to it and whatnot. You're saying, hey, here's my business's social security number. So when you fill out a W-9, which is a form that says you're getting paid by this company and you're working as a 1099 contractor, you fill out a 1099 form, they send you a W-9. You put on your EIN. It's basically tying that payment to your business for tax purposes. So you're going to need one of these things. So just go register for it after you form your business. Set up business banking. This is another thing I didn't do for way too long. Business banking shows that you are separating personal finance from business finance. Again, it's one of those things that makes you a little bit more audit-proof because you're actually putting all the money that goes into your business in the business banking accounts. It's separating personal and business. So it also makes it easier at tax time. Anything you make, if grandma hands you a check for $50 for your birthday, put that in your personal account. If a client hands you a check for $5,000 for doing a good job, you put that in your business banking account. You can also set aside taxes in your business banking account. Personally recommend you take at least 30% out of every check you receive for your business and set it aside in a savings account. So when tax time comes around and you're stuck with 20 grand that you have to pay in, you actually have it. The hope is that you have a good accountant. She's going to whittle down those fees, and that 20 grand sitting in your bank account is then going to be yours to take home and play with. But getting to that same end of the year time frame when you have to pay back and you don't have the money is a much more difficult thing to deal with. So always set some money aside, do it in a business bank account. Accounting. Some ways to do accounting online. FreshBooks.com is what I use. QuickBooks is what I use for my actual bookkeeping. FreshBooks is what I use for invoicing. I used to use FreshBooks for everything. When you first get started out, it works great. Really great piece of software, allows you to generate invoices for your business, send them out to your clients via email. If you want to accept credit card payments, you can do that through their system as well. You can track expenses, and at the end of the year, you can generate reports for your accountant to use to actually see what you took in and what you put out. QuickBooks is sort of the grown-up version of that. It's a lot more difficult to run, but it keeps a lot more detailed record, and it definitely helps in bulletproofing your books for the IRS. So again, an accountant should be able to help you set that up. If you don't know how to do book balancing and accounting, pay somebody to do it. I haven't, and I procrastinate on it constantly until it gets like 6 months before tax time, and then I have to sit down for hours and balance my books all out. It's a huge pain to do. If you stay on top of it though, it's easy to automate and just keep things turning. But again, if you know you're not going to do it, you know you're going to procrastinate, pay somebody else. Expensify, great for keeping track of expenses, and again, hire an accountant. Set up an office. If you know you can't separate work and home life, set up an office. Get outside, interact with folks. You can get co-working spaces. It's a great place to look. I don't know what they have around here, but in San Diego we've got several. They're kind of popping up all over the country. Basically, a co-working space is where you rent a desk, a small space within a larger building. So picture, this room, right? This is a co-working space. We've got little desks. You might be able to pay them $100 a month to rent that desk. That's your desk. But there's people working around you that are designers, developers, maybe accountants. People from all walks work in these spaces, and it's a good place to collaborate. So consider setting up an office. If not, I work from home myself. I've got a little office space there. Anything to help you separate your workday from your personal life, because you need to be able to switch off at the end of the day or you're going to burn out. And if you work on your couch all day and then you sit on your couch all night, or even worse, you work in your bedroom and then you try to go to sleep at night, in the same place that you worked all day, your brain is not going to shut off. You're going to be miserable and you're going to lose a lot of sleep. So have a space set aside, wherever that may be. Find insurance. Before you leave your employer, start researching this stuff. I used esurance.com, I think. I actually got turned down 3 times. I had been under insurance, or insured for 5 years at that point, and the rest of my life as a child, but in my professional career, I'd been insured by my employer. And when I went to get insurance through the same company that currently had me on an insurance rider, they turned me down. Because I'm now a personally insured person and not a business. It's much harder to get insurance as a person and an individual than a business. They have these big umbrella groups where they can't really turn people away. But as a person, they'll look and say, oh, your doctor prescribed X 4 years ago. Well, that's a red flag for us. We're going to turn you down. I think that might have changed now with the new laws, so it might be a bit easier to get it today. But plan for that before you leave your job.
So if you're setting up an LLC, would it be easier to find insurance or
It doesn't make any difference. It's still personal.
Okay.
You might look at your local business groups, your local small business administration. They might have some umbrella groups you can sign in under where a lot of local businesses get together and say have 100 people that need insurance and act sort of as a business themselves. That's one way to do it. I've never found one that worked for me, but look around before you get off your insurance plan. You don't want to have a lapse, especially now that it's legally required. Okay, walk. I'm going to try to run through this because we're running out of time. I find that the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. This is really true in business. Work hard, make money, and that's it. Finding work. So job sites. Careers.stack Overflow is my current favorite, especially for remote work. They actually have a filter option for remote only, so you can kind of cruise through that. Dice.com, Indeed.com, and Craigslist. All great places to actually look for jobs online. Freelancing sites. These sites operate a little bit differently. They actually hook you up with jobs and then act as the intermediary. They take money into escrow from the client. So it's assuring that you're going to get payment before you do the work. It's a great place to find lots of work. Elance, Odesk, Freelancer, and Guru are all kind of the same. However, you usually make a lot less money. That being said, if you need portfolio pieces or you're just willing to take a lower rate because you need some cash coming in, these are great places to work.
Also, there's going to be thousands of other people who have the same idea on those sites.
Yeah, well, so if I...
Find work.
Exactly. Well, it's easier and harder, right? Because you're competing against people in India and other countries where they don't need to make as much.
Yeah, they charge $20 per hour.
Exactly. So again, it's all about how you sell yourself. You know, yeah, you can go hire those guys, but if you want me to work, it's going to cost you a little more, but I'm going to do it right the first time, and you're going to get quality out of it. So it's all about how you market yourself and how you sell yourself in the business world too. Agencies, 8-Point, Vitamin T, and Robert Half, 3 big agencies. They'll actually hire you on as an employee and then contract you out. So again, this is sort of the middle ground between freelancing, working for yourself, and working as a full-time employee. Network, friends, families, and past clients. We already touched on this, so I'm going to kind of keep cruising here. Applying for jobs. Yeah, send out the resume, have the cover letter handy. You know, you're going to need to do this often. So you just kind of practice, and practice makes perfect. Negotiating terms, stick to your guns. Know what you're worth. Actually do your homework on what you can charge and what the industry will support in terms of rate. And then, negotiate. Don't be afraid to stick to your guns on that. A lot of times people go out there and they'll say, well, I need $100 an hour. And say, I was thinking 30. Okay, great. Don't do that. Right? Know when you should bend and know when you should break. If you haven't had any work in 6 months, $30 an hour is awesome. If you're having consistent work coming in at $100 an hour, don't get arrogant about it, but know when it's okay to turn things down. And just negotiate. Contracts in the L word, lawyers. We talked a bit about this early. They are a necessary evil in the space. If you're running a business, there's going to be times when you need a lawyer. It's better to look for them and make relationships with them early, especially just to look over your standard contract that you send out to everybody and know that that's iron tight. Have somebody on speed dial, basically, is my biggest recommendation there. And then do the work. I mean, you actually have to complete the stuff. Do things on deadline, make sure you get it done on time. Don't be that guy that's known for sloppy late work. And get paid. You can invoice however you want. Like I mentioned, FreshBooks, you can pay through credit cards. I usually get paid with check, but you got to make sure you stay on top of your clients. You set a precedent for who you are and how you operate your business. If you let it slip once, twice, everybody's going to know that. I don't know how. I don't know if these people talk. They might be on opposite ends of the country, but somehow they seem to know and have a sixth sense that, oh, he'll just kind of fold if I'm not right there in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. So from day one, make it a point to really stay on top of writing terms in your contracts that say, if you're late, a day past 30 days, an extra 5% on top of your invoice, right? And that's recurring every 30 days thereafter. People don't like to pay extra money. I've had clients that didn't care. They said, okay, the percentage, I'll just pay it. I don't have the money. So something to stay on top of, though. So running, you have to learn the rules of the game, and then you have to play better than anyone else, Albert Einstein. So once you get your business up and running and cruising along, just learn to play the game better. Learn how to be the best person for that client to pick out of the pool that you mentioned of millions of developers out there today. Everybody's a web developer, right? Everybody's got a cousin or a nephew or something that does websites for a living or fun or whatever. They all know web developers. But they're not the people in this room, right? You guys are a lot more talented than that kid that your uncle knows that put together some HTML site using WordPress or whatever. So sell that, and don't be afraid to push that. Market your brand. That's you. Get out there, talk to people, tell them why you're worth the money that you're charging. You really need to sell yourself. Never stop learning. I was a Flash developer for 10 years. I refused to pick up JavaScript. I played with it to get my work done and to kind of interface with the websites, but ActionScript had really surpassed JavaScript. It had become a better language, it was more fun to develop in, I was able to do all these really cool things that now you can kind of do in JavaScript. I fought tooth and nail. I just wanted to stick to my ActionScript guns. It's what I knew, it was my niche. I made a lot of money doing it. It's great. If I wanted to go back to JavaScript, I was going to make a lot less money. So Flash was great, yay. Until Flash wasn't the big ticket anymore. right? And then I had to go back and learn up on JavaScript again. So don't do that to yourself. Keep learning as you're going. Always be learning, always be reading a book, researching a new framework, a new language. Learning is value in your business. The more you know, the more opportunity you have to take on new clients. Bookkeeping, I said this before, I'll say it again. Stay on top of it. It's important. It will audit-proof you. If you're not going to do it yourself, hire someone to do it. Warning again, you guys already heard this spiel, so I'll cruise along. The almighty tax deduction. What can you deduct? Rent, part of your home. Use it for an office. Say 13% of the space in your house, that's 13% of your rent you can deduct. Utilities, your cell phone bill, your internet bill, your gas bill, part of it at least. Hardware, you need to buy a new laptop, write that sucker off. Software, same thing. That includes web hosting and any software you need if you need to buy a Sublime Text license. That's all the stuff you can write off. Travel, did you travel to the event today? Did you have to buy a plane ticket to get here? Did you buy a ticket to the conference? All stuff you can write off as continued learning. Meals and entertainment and professional memberships. You know, if you've got an S Corp and you want to have an employee benefit for a gym membership, professional membership. If you're part of a web development community that has a yearly fee involved, write that off. If you're in the AIGA and you're a designer, write that membership fee off. Meals and entertainment. If you're talking business, you're entertaining a client, you can write that off as well, or at least a portion of it. Again, all things to research, talk to your accountant, they'll help you with this. More. Insurance premiums, out-of-pocket healthcare, education, and employee benefits. So, employee benefits, kind of what you make them. This is sort of a gray area, and again, talk to your accountant, don't just listen to me. Education, this could be considered education. Are you taking a continuing ed course at a local community college? That's something you can write off. Out-of-pocket healthcare. Did you have to pay 50 bucks as a out-of-pocket fee to go to the doctor last week? That's something you can write off. Insurance premiums are the same thing. That 350 bucks I pay every month, that gets written off at the end of the year. Find a good accountant. I don't know if I said this before, but find a good accountant. This is
So I have a
hugely
question on
important.
that. How do I know my accountant's any good?
It's a good question. Word of mouth. I mean, you just talk to people. You never know. There's sites like Angies List where people review things. Mine, you know, I picked a guy. I thought he was good. I heard good things about him and thought he was doing great until I learned he wasn't. It's kind of one of those things. Go with your gut, but ask around. If there's other freelancers in your area, ask them who they use. You know, look on Angie's List. Look for any kind of recommendation sites you can find. Yelp, maybe even. And maybe ask them questions, right? Like, just go in there and say, what kind of business should I form? What would you tell me to write off at the end of the year? Like, pointed questions and see if you like their answers. Plus, you just got to vibe with them. If you get a good feeling from them and you feel like you can get along with this person, then it might be a good fit, at least to try. Don't be afraid to leave them, find somebody better. Pay the man, quarterly payments in many cases for taxes. Tax deadlines are different for corporations. It's not March 15th, no, April 15th, it's March 15th, I believe. Things to be aware of, your deadlines for taxes may be a little bit different if you're a corporation. Corporate franchise tax is at $800 a year just to run that business. So things you have to keep in mind. So is freelancing right for you? I mean, there's a lot of things to weigh out here, guys. Really think it through before you make the jump. Make sure you set up, have a nest egg set aside. Spend some time. Don't be overeager to run out there and just start freelancing today, or do it, but stay in your current job until you're comfortable, until you have that nest egg, until you have an accountant. Do the legwork while you're still getting paid. It's not going to hurt you. If anything, you'll make a little bit extra money while you're in that pay period, where you're getting paid from your business and doing some side work. Really just make sure you set yourself up to wait. That's it for me. Again, special thanks to NC Winners for those freelance cartoons there. Contact info's there. If anybody wants the slide, I will ping this out on Twitter in the next hour or two here with the hashtag for Openwest and freelance.
So I've got a question on time tracking and bidding on copy, or bidding like how much you're going to pay. I've had bad experiences saying how much I'm going to charge for something. Because I'm either going to feel like I ripped them off, or I'm going to feel like I'm working.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a balancing act. And if anybody's got to run out, I'm sorry I ran a little late here, guys. Just feel free to grab me later in the conference too if you have other questions. I'll be around.